All these questions point to the same place. And of course, they're all not questions that can be answered with writing. No matter how many times we try to write the answer out or read about the answer, it has to be directly experienced. That is the hallmark of the Zen school, is this direct experience. Nobody else is teaching. Nobody else is understanding. Nobody else's answer will substitute for our own direct experience of the mind ground from which things arise. And we are, of course, in this very fortunate circumstance for investigating this. And repeatedly coming back, looking and looking at this. So from the perspective of the good fortune that we have, it is amazing that we were born to the parents we had. It's amazing we were actually born to people who fed us, clothed us, took care of us. We could have been born in a concentration camp or in the middle of a war, a time of famine. Lots of people are. There's no... And the fact that we happen to have a very propitious birth is amazing. Or there are places in the world where the raison d'etre is dog eat dog. You know, the struggle for survival. The weak get killed, tromped on. Only the strong survive. And people fight each other all the time. There's fighting realms. But here we are, born into this realm where we've been largely at peace. At least as far as our particular life circumstances are. And we have encountered teachings about goodness, virtue and honesty. Not just Buddhist teachings, but in general, teachings of goodness and virtue and honesty we've all heard and received those. And we were born intact. We were born with functioning limbs and stomachs and eyes and minds. It's not a given that we have these things. It's not a given that our life is, that we are fed. There are lots of people who do not have functioning bodies, who are sick for their whole life. There are lots of people who are not fed. Countless numbers of people. And we have the good fortune, if fortune is the right word, of being born in very, very propitious circumstances and in very, very beneficent conditions. And being surrounded by people who support us. And so to be here in peace, well-fed, well-clothed, and working indoor plumbing is a amazingly good fortune. And so we have to use this amazingly good fortune that we have to dig into what is real, what is fundamental, because it can be gone in a flash. And we can be propelled into a realm of struggle and survival and terror and fear. And all the tsunami of time is inexorable. We all watched the videos of the tsunami in Japan and just watched how people's lives, not only their life themselves was snuffed out, but even people who remained alive, the flavor of their life was forever changed, just a few moments. One person was telling me just yesterday, they were sitting talking in a cafe with a friend saying how wonderful life was, everything was going so well, and then they got a phone call at that moment from their doctor's office saying, please come in, we're concerned you have a mass. Might be malignant. Just in a second, one phone call, propitious circumstance of their good health flips. One trip, one fall, one infection, one clot in the arteries of the heart, capillaries of the brain, and our lives are turned upside down. This stark realization that it's not just a given that we are taken care of, it's not just a given that we're fed, it's not just a given that we have a vital body. But this stark realization of how precious these conditions are, how precious this life is. This feeling of the preciousness of this life, this feeling of the importance of using this precious time in a healthy way. This appreciation of the preciousness of our own life also is fuel for practice. Because we really see how quickly it can all go. We really see how quickly the tsunami of time will come. Then we realize there's a certain urgency to looking directly, to seeing what is most true. But it doesn't matter, in a way, whether our practice, whether our life circumstances are easy or hard. And of course, all of us have both. But this life is one continuous whole. Moment after moment we're reborn, moment after moment. We're subtly different from the last. Now it's subtly different from a few moments ago. And a few moments from now will be subtly different. And we just look back a week, a month, a year, 10 years, a decade, and we can look back and we can just see how those subtle differences all mounted up. One whole life. So this circumstance that we have right here, this particular body and mind, by appreciating it, by practicing, those of you who are doing loving kindness practice, metta practice, by appreciating the whole nature of this life right now, we have to also appreciate everything that led up to it. And in a way, loving kindness practice, if it's done genuinely and deeply, transforms our life from a life of a whole series of failures and shame into a life that we are grateful for all those hard lessons that we learned, and grateful for all those formative elements that brought us to this moment, which is filled with loving kindness. And all of those past events and circumstances, in a way, are like the lower four floors of a building. They're all required to get to the top. If you took one of them out, the top would not be the same. So having this deep appreciation both of our circumstances of our life, but also of this long chain of events. And who knows how far back it goes. That appreciation, acceptance fully, with warmth, our circumstances right here, right now, is the ground from which we can look more deeply. Is the ground, or is the time that we can actually look and see what is the ground that this whole edifice of our life stands. We have to know this directly. Dogen says, this knowing and the total penetration of reality arise together and are practiced together. The total penetration of reality. Practice is not some mental thing that we can go and, it's nice to hear teachings about it, and it's really a wonderful gift. But for the reality, the total penetration of reality means that we have to not just apperceive it with our minds, but with our whole being. Blue Cliff Record, Hekigan Roku, case number 3. Master Ma is unwell. This is the introduction to it. A device, a perspective, a word, a statement, temporarily intended to provide a point of access is still gouging a wound in healthy flesh. So all of the teachings are devices, perspectives, they're words, they're statements. They're temporarily intended to provide a point of access. Access to what? Access to this fundamental mind ground of our true nature. All of the teachings we read and hear, practice, to see the fundamental mind ground. But if we think that the practices, we think that the teachings are themselves the answer, then, and if we think a technique becomes the answer, it can become an object of fixation. The very things which we were using to give us an access point into Dharma practice, if we become fixated on it, if we become thinking it's the thing and not that which is pointing to an object of fixation. Because the truth, of course, has got to be everywhere at all times. And just saying that there is a particular access point is gouging wound in a healthy flesh. And yet, we need to be able to anchor our minds. So that we know directly what is more real. Master Ingo continues, the great function appears without abiding by fixed principles, in order that you may realize there is something transcendental that covers heaven and earth, and yet cannot be grasped. Try to guess, and you'll be confused. The great function appears without abiding by fixed principles. That is, there is a creative element in our lives. Things are constantly coming forward in ways that are mysterious, that we don't understand. There's constant new things. Constantly things are appearing and disappearing. The mind can't even follow all the roots of that appearing and that disappearing. Our fundamental nature is inherently, completely and total creativity. After all, where did these circumstances come from? Where did this beautiful spring day come from? Flowers, birds, trees. In the Christian tradition, they say, of course, it came from God. But in Zen Buddhism,